All right. So I hadn't posted in a while. I was letting kind of my sense of interest build up. I think I totally interrupted something. I kind of wonder if it was something like along the lines of 52 blocks or some kind of conscious workout group. I just walked up. I literally don't take my eyes off my book. Walk up, put my pen in my pocket, put the book down, do 8 chins, grab the book, walk off, and I could tell all these people are looking like, what's homie up to? What's homie up to over there? Just walk off. Mic drop, 8, boom. And I know there's people who are like, 8? Is that a warm-up set? But anyway, so I had my coffee. Because now I'm successfully banking. Now I'm no longer on lame ass pay cards. So I actually have a bank card I've got to get all set up so that all my payments to things go through. Because now you don't own anything. Now you just have a subscription. You just have a subscription. As Alex, the model of subscribing to, fundamentally, again, Cyberpunk had it down. They had a name for it. They called it a data pool. That what you will have is you will have a subscription to a data pool. And now we're starting to see the public data pool of YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook is now fully corrupted. It's been fully corrupted by the liberal, white liberal, black liberal, Hispanic liberal brain virus, mind virus that it erases important information when the subject is uncomfortable to discuss. So something I wanted to discuss about the mothers. So Briffault's Law, Robert Briffault. Robert Briffault. So this is really one of these books that if anybody knows how to publish, the unabridged version of this simply almost doesn't exist anymore. I highly suggest if you're somebody who you want to have one of those books that really sort of takes everything liberal and feminism and shakes it out so that you really understand, wait, in the early 1900s, during where people are really writing about low cultures, high cultures, savage cultures, all this stuff, that somebody who is apparently a socialist was making the argument, no, the way that Europeans inherited specifically Jewish marriage laws and Jewish sexual customs, which didn't apply to themselves. He even gets into this, that while you have the what they call basically a type of clan exogamy, where the male is sent out from the clan to join another clan, and therefore through offering of labor, valuable labor, a young man seals an agreement with another family. What's very interesting about this, and so the idea of the bride price, that you have to then give the family a certain amount of money for the female bride, and that really, that he gets into this, that he's like, there wouldn't be, there's things that are universal and then things that are not. We could find the bride price everywhere. Exogamous, was it? Yeah, not Jacobian, because it wasn't just Jacob, but I mean, that's the person, if I remember right. Yeah, Yaakov, yeah, he'll cheat, yeah. And he's the one that we associate with this, that he will work for a period of 7 years for the wife, for the contract on the wife. And then he gets cheated and he has to work for 14. Well, just that very idea, just that being in that kind of position, that is the position of males who want to marry into a family. And so he gets into bride price is universal. The idea of jealousy over a wife who sleeps with another man and the killing of a cheating wife, that's not universal. And he goes through all these examples of all these many tribes that would even offer their women to explorers as like say the Cook Islands are one of the ones that are kind of famous for this. But he really gets into, he goes, when you find that this is something antiquated and universal, then it shows that it was important. It was very fundamentally important. But other things, if they're not that universal, they probably weren't that important. So you being a loyal wife was never important. The only thing the wife is for sealing a contract between clans. And from that point on, then, the idea of offspring in the family then becomes really more of something having to do with actually having livestock. That it's a stake in the game, that that's all it is. And that the children might not even hold an exceedingly high importance in the way that we think of it now. That you dedicate everything to the children, do everything you can for them. That's not universally as important. Yeah, and that even and so then when you get to savage and low cultures, there's only so many children. To have a tremendous number of children, like he was pointing out, in all these different tribes, you pretty much have a top out of about 5. And then there's an actual ritualized limitation of children. This was something I encountered when one time I was talking with these cats. They were these native guys who, I said one of the ways that overpopulation was limited by this one Native American group was that they had a limited number of names in a generation. So you simply could not have more than that many children. Which their response was that, oh yeah, well, if you ran out of names, I guess you just had more kids. And now these were Tupac fans, so they were losers. They were mental losers, and they were really losers. They were really like these guys who you eventually were like, God damn it! Every time they're around, they always are disturbing shit, and they had real dysfunctional problems. Their family was obviously very, very, very dysfunctional, and so what hit me was the thing that Briffault brings up, that we still desperately need to think like European Christians. European Christians, at a certain stage, mostly through the Jesuit church, Jesuit order, and then with a lot of Protestant groups, had to believe that fundamentally God established virtue. So virtue is this universal, and that Christian virtue being the highest kind of system of virtues, demanding magnanimity of virtue and behavior, that was actually normal to all people, and that it's an essential aspect of all humans, and that it's sort of like Christianity wakes that up in you. Now there is, for the Orthodox, they're like, yeah, that's kind of true, but it's also that humans are fallen. See, the Orthodox always have, the scales always come into balance. That's why the Orthodox don't fall out of balance and have kind of unbalanced views theologically. So they're like, yes, humans are always meant to be at this kind of highest point of themselves, and it's totally unique to Christianity, and that the spread of that, which almost got killed off a number of times. Is that's why it's such a rare gift to the world. And that its entire theological structure actually is completely interdependent on all its parts, or else it just doesn't work. You get one of the many, many, many systems of thinking that's already existed. And, you know, God being powerful, the divine being just spirits, humans trying to fit into the mold of some kind of abstraction or abstract character. And so it becomes arbitrary what is good and what is evil. So he gets into, no, women have always prostituted themselves, been licentious in their youth, that is normal. This is actually, for how much we have these stories of the greatness of the girls of the temple, and how, once she gets pregnant, she has to do this and do that. Obviously, what this really was is that was the rarity. That's the rare occasion. We're trying to Christianize what we're seeing there. We're simply not accepting, no, really. Sailors and other forms of traders and people who would be able to travel, probably certain classes of men only. Because think of how that must have felt to really have this idea of, no, only certain classes of men would ever have access to something like that. So this was, this was really kind of taking the world and showing it to be this truly like kind of dark and miserable place for a lot of men, without some kind of concept of marriage. And so Briffault really gets into, like, no, up until the world encountered this idea of exogamous, out-of-clan male marriage, where a man is sent out to another clan to marry into it, there was really nothing like that. Women just did whatever the fuck they wanted, and the men usually went along with it and were into it. And if you supposedly offended this guy, you gave him there was always an exchange of money, an exchange of goods. It was that the women shared themselves for the exchange of goods. It's every possible thing that is we think of as low and savage was normal to humans up until Christianity. And so prostitution was barely even prostitution until Christianity, and then this normal behavior of humans is actually not that good. And then on top of it, it's the idea of that it's some form of exploitative behavior, when that's not true either. When no, women loved this. This was how the world worked. This is how the species actually functioned, with abortion being an infanticide being extremely normal. So if we know that there's these tales of like Moloch and stuff like that, and these sacrifices of children, remember, the reason why we can't say killing children was normal is because the very idea of the modern literate society is a function of the Puritans, where the Puritans insisted on universal literacy so nobody would go to hell, where that wasn't normal for most of America. Most of America didn't care. And so you end up with then this idea that it's high virtue, that if you read, you'll be virtuous. Only if you're intelligent, you'll be virtuous. Intelligent, well-read, highly developed, high-culture society. And its tendency to be literate, to be able to argue out moral arguments, things like that's literally the bailiwick of the literate society, and tends to define us as opposed to societies that aren't as virtuous, are more base, are low cultured, are more savage. So one of the things that ties this is that women are inherently virtuous. Not that there is almost no thing called virtue which applies to women other than they can make things that are kind of fun or nice or good. That basically women were there literally to do almost anything other than be a loyal wife, is what Briffault is pointing out in the book, that was the last function in tribal societies. The idea of the loyal wife is just a make-believe thing that Americans and Europeans had to believe in, because otherwise it made these people, like, it made being virtuous in a way, according to Christianity, normal. So now we get this idea that no, these societies did kill off lots of children. You see, we don't want to think of that because we try to make then the pre-Christian societies as virtuous as Christian society, only for the sake of doing so. Because we have to try to make it that, oh, well, no, the old philosophers and such, their arguments caused men to be virtuous, this, that, and the other. So now it'll make a little more sense to people who you're very aware of, especially the late part of the New Testament, that there's a command given out to the Christian men, I forget what letter it's in, of how to treat your wife. And with the idea being that if you when you read it, you have to kind of fill in, obviously what's not being brought up is that this guy's telling these new Christian adherents in the Greek world, he's explaining to them, he's like, no, you should be exceedingly kind to your wife. So the one of the apostles in one of the letters is writing to these new adherents of this new religion who are Greeks. He's telling these Greek people, you should be nice to your wives. Why would he be even telling them that if they were virtuous people who already did good things? Because they didn't care about their wives. As we see from Briffault, all she was there to do was a few handful of things because she wasn't valuable to him for the most part at that time. It was a kind of a house servant of sorts that you sort of got along with. And the thing that she did that was most important is that she would fuck other men. So if we think about at present, so yes, some of you are going to be like, wait, so Christianity made us all cuckolds. Yes, there was no such thing quite as cuckoldry. And cuckoldry would be the kind of thing that there's actually even a type of hustle behind this. The idea of hooking. Like, what, you were on the hook. Or you got hooked, and the idea is that you got hooked by the arm by some woman. She started talking to you, and another man pops up. This other man is like, why are you talking to my woman? And then the idea is that he shakes you down for money. The whole hustle with the very idea of the hustle of the hook, or the hustle of hooking, is that the man and the woman both get money. They basically, they're in it together. Now, we will call this guy a pimp now. We'll say he's prostituting his woman or his wife now. But this is one of the most apparently common ways that people made money back in the day. And that it was just customary. It was just understood, like, oh, he got you, crazy, flaming pussy Mary, got you, and, some stranger comes into town, some trader or something comes into town, and he gets hooked. So And that wasn't abnormal. That became a crime and abnormal in Christianity. So Briffault's really, this is a really good book because he really presents to various people in history that were key to us misunderstanding all this, putting it in terms of like prostitution, these poor men who exploit their wives through prostitution. And it's like, no, they're not exploiting their wives. Their wives are doing what is normal in their society, and that's fucking other men. That was a normal behavior, and it turns out is very normal among most humans until the Abrahamic religions and scholars that had been acquainted with those for at that point, by that point, centuries. So this is also then a very important thing that was Ryan Dawson made me understand. He goes, people don't really get who Americans are. Americans are the people, are the most savage, killer, homicidal people ever. Like, Americans are really the best people at killing other humans that have ever existed. He's like, that's how America has maintained its power. You know, we all have to really kind of consider. And he's like, you have people who basically, at a certain point, stopped killing and became members of the Republic because they were so ambitious, they made it in another field. They no longer had to kill for money. And I was like, that's very interesting. He goes, you could find people who are literally descended from samurai. You could find people who are descended from some of the most savage warriors in history to this day. He's Native American, so he's one of these people who he would know, yes, many of the groups of Native Americans, Native American nations, despite what people like want to say about Native Americans, many people don't understand. No, many Native American peoples lived. It's just that we forgot the deals that they made to get along with this new clan of warriors who was able to beat everybody. That they basically made treaties that and married in. So that's why there's so many people over since the 1970s. The Native American population has exploded, and we don't talk about it. We don't talk about how many more Native Americans there are now than in past decades. It's because people who were fundamentally mestizo Native American finally claimed that they were within the last 20 to 30 years. So you end up having like people like me, that we're part Native American. We just don't know what part is Native American. So it's just that we will bring it up, but it's not like legally a trackable thing. So people would say, oh, there's more Native Americans. And it's just simply people are admitting it. Or it's that they weren't Cherokee anymore. One of their grandparents or their mom was half Cherokee. It doesn't make them Cherokee. This is also a very American way of thinking about it. They're from Arkansas. They're not a Cherokee. They lived in the Cherokee, among the Cherokee Nation, they would be a Cherokee. But it might be that by the 1990s, they bring up the fact that they are part Native American. So this is actually, so I just was rolling a lot of this over in my mind. This book is one of these books that it not only is the red pill, but it really helps kind of clear up is some of these ideas that we've had, that we're basing it around sort of these new philosophy ideas that, oh, everybody has these universal ideas of truth and justice, when that's absolutely not true. Absolutely not. No, most people's had fundamentally low-minded, self-centered ideas. And it made sense and it worked for them. that's really what we end up learning. That big fat ideas that are supposed to be good for the entire human race are weird. That's a weird thing, and that it's a weirdness associated with Western society when we encountered other ones. That we think of saving the entire world. To most peoples across the planet, this was kind of a weird make-believe idea. Like they could not understand why we would have the moral stances we had on things, and that it's universal. So one of the things I could tell you to this day threw me off about this kind of point of view was when this got brought up specifically by the good rabbi that I learned from, that he was like, yeah, in Judaism, it's a different system of morality. And he's like, because God is so unexpected, he does all these things that are so unexpected in the Old Testament. So to Jews, the idea that there's this sort of absolutes of the absolute universals only apply to the unitary Godhead. Outside of that, like with human morality and choices and free will, it's a very different idea. You have lots of options. So there are no absolute black and white good and evil things, which Christianity is an oddity to them, in that it is so black and white on good and evil. So, just some thoughts I was having. All right, bye.